Cyril Ramaphosa expected to announce changes to his executive tonight. Speculation mounting about whether he will make lateral changes or perhaps fire any ministers. We have some insights now, and let's speak to our own Govan Whittles, who's going to tell us what we can expect tonight. Govan, good morning. It's good to have you here. Speculate as we will up until that very last hour. Let's start with the vacant post and the expected appointments to those positions.
Well, that's really at the heart of this expected cabinet reshuffle. It's brought about not because the president won a second term at the ANC's conference, but because there are vacant positions within the national executive. Should be pointed out that the position of Department of Public Service and Administration has been vacant for quite a while. Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi had been acting in that position. But that's really not the most high-profile vacancy, is it? It's the deputy presidency that everyone is watching to see what will happen. And we've prepared what you're seeing on screen right now, and there's a check mark over Paul Mashatile's face. He's expected to be installed as the deputy president of the country. Fikile Mbalula definitely leaving as the transport minister just by virtue of him being the secretary general. The big question mark over the blank space there is on the electricity minister. That's really the position that everyone's going to be watching. And then, of course, the DPSA minister, as we said. But just before we leave this issue, Paul Mashatile, an interesting report on Sunday World yesterday, saying that his ascension to the position of deputy presidency, or at least presidency in the future, may be scuppered by the fact that he's admitted to submitting a falsified resolution of the National Executive Committee, saying that they had extended the term of the interim provincial committee in the Northwest. One of the people that laid that complaint took it to court after the conference was scheduled in the Northwest, has claimed that this makes him guilty of perjury. Well, now we're in the realm of speculating about the step-aside resolution, and he hasn't even taken his position.
Let's just talk about Paul Mashatile for a second, Govan. Some people making suggestions that the reason for the delay in the announcement of this cabinet reshuffle perhaps could have been that the president is unsure what to do with this situation that surrounds the deputy president of the ANC. Possible, or really just clutching at straws here?
Look at the evidence. The president only essentially endorsed Paul Mashatile for the position of deputy presidency at the ANC at the very last moment, at the conference itself. In the week leading up to the ANC conference, the president went to Giyani alongside Senzo Mchunu, who then told Newzroom Afrika at that Giyani bulk water project that he was available if his name had to be raised for the position of deputy presidency from the floor at the conference. Of course, the ANC went to conference this time with the electoral committee saying that people were not allowed to make formal endorsements, that no slates were allowed, and the president himself had tried to shy away from endorsing any candidate. There has been speculation that Paul Mashatile was not the president's preferred deputy president in the ANC, but by the time the Nasrec conference rolled around, he certainly did look like he was the preferred candidate. In the last statements of the president in Parliament, he had thanked Deputy President David Mabuza for being an exceptional Deputy President, playing his role very well. He hasn't made any comments yet about the incoming Deputy President, as we speculate about him taking that position, but it certainly is the expectation. We don't know whether he's the preferred Deputy President. We know that the President is sort of hamstrung, that he has to appoint Paul Mashatile, but of course, we know that Thabo Mbeki appointed Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka as the deputy president at one point, and then created a precedent that you don't have to be the deputy president of the ANC to be deputy president of the country.
Well, let's try and move this conversation ahead, Govan, and talk about whether the president is indeed going to mount a wholesale cabinet reshuffle, or is it going to be a mere filling of vacant positions. Why do I ask that? Some people hold the strong view that so close to an election, if the president does mount a wholesale cabinet reshuffle, that could upset some people that he will have to rely on to mount the ANC election campaign. ahead of the elections next year?
It's a reasonable consideration. It certainly does appear to be one that's arisen within the ANC. And we could, of course, speculate on whether or not he'll make those wholesale changes, but I think we do have some insight here. Let's take a look at what Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General of the ANC, had to say about how they believe the ANC president and president of the country will approach this reshuffle and what the implications of the 2024 elections are on his considerations.
We are not reconstituting government. It will just be patch-ups to move with speed on all these things we are doing. Just look to 2024. You're looking at this thing now like as if now we are literally going to reconstitute government. No. Reshuffle is because there is a vacancy, you've got a consideration there and there. You apply your mind.
We're just going to do patch-ups. Vincent Magwenya said to us some time ago that this is going to be vacant posts that are filled. I don't know. I'm starting to accept in my mind, Govan, that maybe a wholesale cabinet reshuffle is not in the offing here, based in part on the comments of the Secretary General.
Well, it does seem that way, but there have, of course, been some rumors about possible replacements. Let's take a look at some of those rumors right now. And we've prepared this graphic on speculated changes. We've put a few question marks over some of these ministers there. You'll see Bekele. Just last week we saw reports emerging on News 24, I believe, that there were some considerations towards replacing Bekele because of rampant crime in the country. We've put Blade and Zamande up there just this morning based off of the calls from some of the students that are protesting, saying that they believe the minister should be fired for how he's dealt with the NSFAS issue, but also the fact that they've put a cap on how much NSFAS is willing to pay for residential accommodation. Blade and Zamande didn't return to the NEC. He wasn't re-elected at that conference in Nasrec as well. And then Lindiwe Sisulu and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, just because of that Tottenham Hotspur deal that we saw the presidency raising questions around, and then the fact that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, look, she's the most popular candidate to be deployed as a minister coming from KwaZulu-Natal. She did directly challenge the president, call for him to step down over the Phala saga. It's a view that she hasn't withdrawn just yet. There have been reports that she'll probably survive, but it will at least be a consideration.
Very interesting indeed, because the last two people that you speak about, Lindiwe Sisulu and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, those are people that have publicly challenged the president, and I know that some alliance partners of the ANC have actually gone to the point of saying, at least that is what is reported, that those who have challenged you publicly, at least you've got to get rid of those people. Let's talk about those who have resigned from Parliament and some new appointments in Parliament, and whether that gives us any clues about who could potentially occupy that all-important position of electricity minister.
Right, so there is some speculation building that Mr. Kgosientsho Ramaphosa, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramaphosa, he's the head of infrastructure in the presidency, might take up that position. We've prepared, lastly, I think we do have the graphic available, which shows the resignations from Parliament and then the people that have been sworn in more recently. Some of the interesting names that pop up of those that have been sworn in recently include Sihle Zigalala, former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, and then, of course, we have Marupene Ramakgopa, the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, second Deputy Secretary General, and then, of course, Enoch Godongwana being sworn in as a Member of Parliament. It frees up the President to make appointments from outside of the MPs, Enoch Godongwana being one of those. And now he's able to perhaps retain someone who's not an MP or bring in someone new who's not an MP. I suppose it allows him to make a super sub from somewhere that we don't expect. At the last cabinet reshuffle, or the appointment of the cabinet, we saw Patricia de Lille coming into government. That raised the expectation that the president could appoint someone from outside of the ANC.
So close to an election, do you think that the president might be that brave as to appoint an ANC outsider to come into that post, that all-important post of electricity minister?
Well, if he does it, he would secure himself a future coalition partner. And the ANC currently polling at under 50%. It's developing a strategy which will be tabled to the next NEC meeting in the middle of March on how it will approach coalition negotiations. Fikile Mbalula says they are aware of every negotiation taking place around the country, in the metro municipalities, in the local municipalities. They're clearly taking coalitions very seriously. And the president has shown he's willing to govern with someone outside of the ANC in the form of the good leader, Patricia de Lille. Whether or not he'll bring someone else in is open to speculation, which is what we've been doing all along. But let's see what he does. Only a few more hours to go.
Govan Whittles, thank you very much. He is helping us to try and plug in the holes. What you might expect tonight, I don't know.